Why do so many of us say that we want something to change, say that we want something to be different in our life, and yet there's no change? I mean, why do we talk like we really want things to be different? I don't know what your area is, but I'm sure you have an area where you think, oh, this is what I want. And you tell people, man, this is what I want. I want this to be different. I want to change this. You keep telling, maybe you ask for accountability. It's a prayer request. I mean, if you ask the people closest to you, hey, is there something, if they could change one thing about them, what would they change? Your friends probably know because you've talked to them about this. We've all seen people like that talk the talk, but we aren't just willing to pay the price, and we are people like that, okay? We do that in our different areas, and last week, we started this a 3-week series, and last week talked about the first thing that needs to happen in order for you to finally do the things that you say you want to do, to finally have the change that you say you want to change, and the first thing to consistently do what it takes, to be willing to consistently pay the price, we said, was you have to be 100% certain about the future unseen result. You have to be as sure about a result that you can't see, that's somewhere out there in the future. You have to be as certain of that as you are the immediate result. We looked at Hebrews 11:1. It says, now faith is the assurance of things hoped for, the conviction of things not seen. You have to be 100% sure of what you hope for. That's faith. Where do you lack faith? In whatever area it is where you say you want things to be different, but nothing ever changes. We have to be as certain about the future unseen result as we are about the visible result. Now, I've been using the illustration to this to kind of help, and we'll continue talking about it today, about my battle with weight. Okay, for the first 36 years of my life, I would have told you that I wish I was in shape. I really want to get in shape. Actually, I have a picture for you. This is from 7 years ago, right before we moved up here. Now, in my defense, a lot of that is pregnancy weight, okay? Because I had 2 kids, 13 months apart. I mean, it was really wreaked havoc on my body. But if you would have known me all of those years, and you would have said, Paul, do you want to be over? I would have said, no, I want to be in shape. I want to get in shape. I want to get in shape. But I never did what it would take. I was never willing to pay the price. And maybe it's in some other area, but like you, I would say, well, I really want to change that. And I'd maybe make steps toward it, maybe have a little times of victory, but things never change. And we talked about the certainty issue last week. And the reason why I battled with weight my whole life was because I was 100% certain of the reward of eating another piece of pizza. But I was not 100% certain of the reward of turning it down. And so I gave in, like you do, in whatever area it is where you say you want things to be different, but nothing ever changes. Now, we say the certainty issue, and this is the proof, okay? This is the proof that Hebrews 11:1 is true. If you've ever been in a situation where you wanted to change something, as you started to make progress, and if you've ever, lost weight or whatever, I mean, for me, it was like, man, I don't know if I could. And then I started to lose weight. Like the pounds started coming off, the pants started fitting looser, and like, man, I think I can do this. Well, that's called getting more faith. I started to be a believer. In dealing with debt, another illustration, Dave Ramsey and good financial counselors will tell you, hey, if you're in debt and you got all these different debts, common sense would say, well, you pay off the debt first that has the largest interest rate. That's actually not what you should do. You should pay off the smallest debt first, even if it's no interest rate in comparison to one of the larger ones. Why? Well, because at first you have this huge mountain of debt, and you're like, I don't know if I can do it. I don't know if I can do it. And then you pay off that first one, and you're like, I might be able to do this. And then you pay off the next one. You're like, and you start to become a believer. See, in order for you to change, you have to have faith. In what area do you not follow through? In what area do you say things, you want things to be different, but they don't ever change consistently? It's in that area that you lack faith. Now, that's the first piece of the puzzle, is the certainty issue. As certain about a future unseen result as you are about the immediate visible result. But the second thing you need, this is, you can't do it with just last week, with just Hebrews 11:1. The second thing you need is that you've got to be convinced that the value of the long-term result is better than the value of the short-term result. Okay? The value of the unseen reward is more important to you, is bigger to you than the value of the short-term rewards. It would be nice if you could have short-term rewards and long-term rewards. If you could go, well, this is good in the short term and good in the long term. You know what? Life doesn't usually work that way. It's one or the other. And if you're going to change what you say you want to change about you, you're going to have to start believing that the long-term reward, if you pay the price, that the reward of that is not just as certain, but you're going to have to decide and believe that that reward is better. Now, I'll go back, the struggle with weight. As I said, I was getting better. In fact, my wife and I had both kind of worked on this. We were both down to our married weight. After 11 years of marriage, we had got back down to where we were when we got married, and we were feeling pretty good, and we were both certain that it made a difference. I mean, we had started to see progress, so we were believers, in the sense like, man, I know that eating right, eating better, exercising makes a difference. So we were believers. And we actually kind of celebrated it, kind of fit with our anniversary time, and celebrated our weight loss. Went on a cruise in April of 2007. And cruise was cool. If you've ever been on a cruise, they're pretty fun. Well, that Christmas, I was looking through pictures and saw a picture of my wife and I standing out in the Bahamas, standing in the water. Had some stranger take our picture, and I wasn't wearing a shirt. Now, I don't have this picture for you today, but I saw that, and the thing was like I'd already lost a lot of weight, and I looked at that, and honestly, something changed in my heart. That is the only way to describe it. I looked at that, and for the first time in my life, I valued being healthy over eating whatever I wanted. It was just like something just clicked in me and said, I don't want that anymore. I don't want to eat whatever I want. I don't want to be lazy. I want to be healthy. I want to feel healthy. I want to look healthy. See, we're only willing to pay the price if we believe in the certainty of a future reward, and if we will believe that the value of that future reward is better. It's a decision we have to make. We have to decide what we really want. See, we talk about what we want and we want to change, but what do we really want? We have to decide that we want what's in future. What we can't have now. The reason why this is so hard is because we're wired for instant gratification. In fact, most of us will live our life choosing the immediate short-term pleasure, even if it's substantially a smaller benefit than the future benefit if we would pay the price. But if we could see the future, if our eyes could be open to see the future and the payoff, the reward that comes with these sacrifices, we would change. We would change. Is this biblical? Absolutely. Look at Hebrews 11:6. It says, without faith, it is impossible to please him. Now, anytime the Bible says the word impossible, and if God says this is going to be impossible, like you kind of want to pay attention. It's not like, hey, this might impact your life, or this could be relevant, or it's probable. He's like, no, without faith, it is impossible. What's faith? 100% certainty, right? We looked at that last week. Without faith, it's impossible to please him. For he who comes to God must believe that he is, that he exists, which that's maybe the easier one to kind of go, okay, I guess that makes sense. You got to believe that God exists if you're going to please him. But then he adds, and that he is a rewarder of those who seek him. He's a rewarder of those who seek him. See, everyone knows we need to believe in God. Not everybody knows I need to believe that he's going to reward me if I'm going to live in a way that brings honor to him. It's going to be impossible for you to please God if you don't believe that he'll reward you for seeking him. Why? Because we got rewards right in front of us. We got rewards right in front of us going our own way. And if we don't believe that God's going to reward us for following him, then we are going to do what we believe is going to bring us the reward. Do you know why you sin? Do you know why I sin? The reason you sin is the same reason I sin. It's because we like it. We like it. I mean, think about it. Like, nobody's forcing you. You're dragging, kicking, and screaming. The reason you sin is because you look at what sin promises, the reward of giving in, and you think, I want that reward. That's the reason why we sin. The problem is, we're being duped. We're being tricked. It's why you need to believe that God is a rewarder of those who seek him, because if you're going to say no to temptation, if you're going to resist temptation, if you're going to give up that reward, it's going to be because you believe there is another reward that is better for you if you stand firm. See, we believe that it's immediate certain pleasure. That one's obvious. But also, and you may not say this, but if you think about it and based on our behavior, it's true. We actually believe that it's better pleasure than what God offers us. I mean, if we didn't believe that, we wouldn't give in to temptation. We're sacrificing long-term, permanent pleasure for short-term gratification. You can't have it both ways. And this is true in most areas of life. The long-term benefits, the benefits if you pay the price, the long-term, those are way in almost every circumstance in life. Those are the good ones. Those are the good ones. If you would just be patient, you'd have the better rewards. Let me give you an example, a monetary example here. This is just a great illustration of this. Okay, if you're 25 years old and you have $100, most 25-year-olds, if they have $100, they want to spend it. Okay, like they're sure of the reward because I can go buy something, I can enjoy something, and that's what I want to do with $100. Now, another option with that $100 would be to put it into retirement. Put that $100 towards retirement. Now, this is crazy to most 25-year-olds, right? I mean, $100. Why would I do that? What good's $100 going to be to me when I'm 65? You know, like I want it while I can still enjoy it. No offense to any of you who are older in here, but that's the mind of a 25-year-old. Like I don't know what that's going to be. So I'd rather have $100 now than $100 in 40 years. And we think we're making a good choice. You're being duped. You're being duped. You're being tricked. Because see, $100, I mean, if you put that in a mutual fund, good mutual fund, over the course of the stock market's history, will easily return 10% on an average. You know what $100, just putting $100 in and walking away and coming back and picking it up in 40 years is? It's $5,300. $5,300. So if you're saying, I don't care about retirement, I want to enjoy my time now, you are forsaking a much bigger reward because you're not willing to wait. Because you're refusing to believe in the certain, you can, the whole certainty, well, I don't know if it's going to be worth it, I don't know what it's going to do, I don't know if it's going to, yeah, you can make all that stuff. You got to believe in the certainty and recognize the value. $5,300 is better than $100. It just is. Now, I was going to illustrate it this way. It's actually really interesting because and I'll just ask the question, would you rather win? I mean, let's say you go to the mall and you fill out one of your they have a little contest thing, you fill out your name and fill it, and they call you and they go, you won, and you're like, what did I win? And they said, you have a choice. You could either have a Ferrari for a day or a Lexus for 5 years. Which would you rather have? Now, most of us in here would go, well, duh. I mean, even though, sure, the Ferrari would be fun for a day, but I'd get to enjoy a lesser pleasure, but for a lot longer period of time, which honestly I believe will allow me to derive more benefit. So I'll choose the long-term reward. And if we're honest with ourselves, I think that's sometimes how we view the rewards of following Christ. This is huge for you young people, okay? Because you're going to look at it, you're going to have opportunity, you're going to go, okay, well, I could sin, which is going to give me this amazing pleasure, or I could follow Jesus, which is going to give me this little pleasure. We have it backwards. You have it backwards. No, when you sin, you are experiencing the little, small pleasure in exchange for infinitely greater pleasure in following Christ. Really, you're settling for a Pinto for a day instead of a Ferrari for eternity. I mean, if you are going to live a life that pleases God, you are going to have to believe that God is a rewarder of those who seek Him. And we're not talking about subpar, secondary, runner-up kind of awards. We're talking about the best. Great passage illustrates this later in Hebrews 11. By faith, Moses, now if you're not familiar with the story of Moses, beginning of Exodus, you can pick up in Exodus 1 and kind of read his story. By faith, Moses, when he had grown up, refused to be called the son of Pharaoh's daughter. He was like royalty. I mean, in the Pharaoh's home, could have had everything that he wanted in life. Choosing rather to endure ill treatment with the people of God than to enjoy the passing pleasures of sin. He said, well, I would rather be following Christ than enjoy the past. And we're talking about significant pleasures, way richer lifestyle than any of us would ever have the opportunity to lead here on earth. He could have had it all. And he said, I would rather be identified with the people of God than enjoy the passing pleasures of sin. It says, considering the reproach of Christ, which is disgrace, the disgrace that came with following Christ in that society. considering disgrace of following Christ greater riches than the treasures of Egypt, for he was looking to the reward. That is unbelievable. I mean, you look at it, but he knew something that you and I don't know. Because see, we look at temptation, we look at sin, we look at what other people are doing, life apart from Christ, and we think, wow, they have everything, and I'm going to give up that great stuff, but, I'm sure it'll be okay when I stand before Jesus, but, I'm really giving up. No, you're giving up nothing to gain everything. Don't settle for the passing, pathetic pleasures of sin when you have the overwhelmingly rich, never to be taken away, everlasting rewards that come with following Christ. See, we're being duped every time we sin. Every time you give in to temptation, we do it because we like it. At that moment, here's just the truth. At that moment, that's what you really want. When you say, no, I don't want to, I want to be done with this, I really want to do this, I really want to do that. No, when you give in to sin, you're deciding at that moment, no, this is what I really want. The long-term consequences of that are devastating. They are. Sure, there's a temporary reward, but the long-term consequences are devastating. You have to be, if you're going to stand firm against temptation in whatever area that is where you keep saying that you wish you didn't and you want to be free from, and those things that we keep saying, for you to be free from that, you have to be 100% certain of the future reward in following Christ, and you have to be 100% certain that that reward is infinitely better. They can't be close, because it's like, well, a little bit bigger reward in whenever, or this reward. No, it's like, no, the reward of following Christ is way like Moses did. Way better following God than it is to go my own way. Now, there's a book called Every Man's Battle. Sure, a lot of you guys have read of it. Probably not enough of you have read it. This book talks about struggle with lust, just a common struggle that guys have, especially in our environment. And just so you know, the look but don't touch thing doesn't fly for those of us who are followers of Christ. Jesus shot that standard out of the water and said, no, you're not to lust after a woman. Now, if you've read the book, and it's phenomenal. He gives us a tool he calls it bouncing the eyes, which is just absolutely phenomenal, incredibly helpful. Because the idea is like you can't control what your eyes look at, but you can control what they do once you see something. You really, and he said you basically have to train yourself like a reflex. If you set your hand on the stove and it was hot, and you would just whip it away as soon as you could because you thought, I don't want to touch that. You didn't have to really think about it. It's what you do. Well, you can actually train your eyes to bounce. And when you see something like, whoa, did I look at that? You can actually train your eyes to do that. Now, here's the deal. Guys, if you have this struggle, and most of you probably do or have dealt with it at some point in your life, you know that there's like cycles where you're doing pretty well and you seem to have victories, and then you kind of aren't doing very well. And kind of this, sometimes you're doing well and sometimes you're not. And I've had people, that are just like, man, I just can't control my eyes. I just can't control my eyes. Now, hypothetically, let's say that's you. And if that's not your area, ladies, you have something else that maybe is your area, your temptation where you keep giving in. Let's work with me here on this and say, let's say you sat across the table from me and I said, you're really struggling with this? You can't seem to get victory? Well, I'll tell you what we'll do. Today, for the rest of the day, I just want you to keep track of how many times you bounce your eyes. Just every time you have a victory, just like 1, 2, just count them, and then you could count tomorrow and count the next day. After 3 days, come back, and every time you bounce your eyes, I'm going to give you $1,000 for every time that you bounced your eyes. Would the problem be solved within the 3 days? It would. It would. Do you know why it would? Because for the first time in your life, you would believe that the reward of bouncing your eyes is better than the reward of looking. Think about it. Think about it. Every time you were successful, you'd be like, yes, another $1,000. Every time you looked, you'd be like, oh, she wasn't worth $1,000. Like you would be totally like, you'd be so vigilant to make sure that your eyes were where they were supposed to be. You'd be bummed every time you failed because you gave up a reward. Did you know that every time, guys, you bounce your eyes, God notices and he will reward you? Every time? Did you know that every time you hold your tongue, you don't have the outburst of anger? Every time you pass up on the opportunity to maybe cheat a little bit on a test or cheat the government out of money, every time you do right, every time you stand firm against the temptation, God sees it, and you will not lose your reward for that. He will reward you. Every time you sin, you're giving up those rewards. You're being tricked. You're being duped. Satan's laughing, because he got you to settle for some pathetic passing pleasure in comparison to an eternal reward that's infinitely better. Now, this isn't just for battling sin, but think this through. Let's say, and here's a common struggle. I think for everybody in here who's a follower, not everybody, some of us are just more disciplined than others, but most of you probably, there are times when you say, hey, I really want to get up and spend time with Jesus this morning. I want to get up, I want to, set my alarm, I'm going to get up and read Pastor talked about it again, or listen to a radio thing. I really need to do this, and so I'm going to get up tomorrow at 6:30 or 7 or 9 or 11, depending on your schedule, right? And you're like, I'm going to get up and spend time with God because I really believe that this is important and this is something I should do. And so the alarm goes off at 6 or 9 or 11, and you hit snooze. Do you know why you hit snooze? Now, you could blame that you're tired and your judgment's impaired, and that's fine. But with impaired judgment, the reason why you hit snooze is because at that moment you believe the reward of sleep is better than the reward of spending time with God. But if you believed that the reward was greater to spend, that you were going to be rewarded more, that it was going to bring you more pleasure to get up and spend time with God, you would do it. In fact, I could prove it to you. If I said this week, hey guys, we're going to do this church-wide experiment for the 7 o'clock, 6:30 service only, okay? And just for you guys, here's what we're going to do. You're going to go home and every day, I just want you to keep track, and we're going to do the honor system, but every day you get up a half an hour earlier than you currently are getting up and spend, like 10 minutes trying to wake yourself up and then 20 minutes with God. Okay? And if you can do that for Monday through Saturday, if you could do that all 6 days, then I will give you $1,000 for every day. Next week, come in and just say, hey, I did it, and we'll give you $6,000 Monday through Saturday. You did it. Now, you got to participate with me. Show of hands, how many of you would participate in that, and you would do it 6 days out of 6? Right? We would. I mean, even if you're not a Christian, you're like, dude, I'll spend time with Jesus for $1,000, right? Why? Why would you do that? The reason is because for the first time maybe in your life, you'd believe that the reward of spending time with God is better than the reward of sleep. See, the problem is we don't believe that God's a rewarder of those who seek him. We treat obedience to him and we think that we're giving up something so significant when we follow him, when the reality is we're gaining everything. The reason we choose to spend instead of give is because we don't believe in the reward of giving. We don't believe in certainty. We don't believe, I don't know for sure that I'm going to get a reward, and if I do, it's not going to be as good as that new toy. That's why we do it. Let's just be honest with each other and stop kidding ourselves. That's the reason why we do it. If you choose to spend instead of give, that's why, because you believe that the reward of spending is better than the reward of giving. You don't believe that God's a rewarder of those who seek him. Now, for some, I know we talked about the whole investor-consumer thing, and some of you, it's like, no, it's a habit thing. I try, I just forget. And we actually came up with this idea, and I think it's really going to be helpful. It's been cool for me. These cards are just at tables in the front and back as you leave the auditorium. They're just little thin plastic cards that just say investor across the top and just says, do not store up for yourselves treasures on earth, just some advice, command from Jesus. And you could take these cards and stick them, and this is really important, in front of your credit card, not behind it, okay, or your debit card, because it doesn't work if it's behind it. But and my suggestion would be to take as many of these as you have cards. So when you open your wallet, all you see is investor, 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 investor. And it's like, oh yeah, okay. And I mean, sometimes you're going to need to spend, but there's the reminder ahead of time. There's a reminder. Take some of these. Some of you are like, I don't want that. You know why you don't want that? Because you don't believe that Jesus is a rewarder of those who seek him. You're being tricked to think that you're going to derive more benefit, that the rewards of doing your own thing are better than the rewards of following Christ. See, if we have a choice to go our own way or choose to obey God, we're choosing between the immediate benefit and the long-term benefit. It's incredibly hard to do. It's why most people don't. It's why we need faith to believe in the certainty and the value of the reward. Now, for those of you who are not yet followers of Jesus, this is so key for you to understand this. Because, in the whole journey and the Spirit, we kind of see how it goes for people. You come in, you're like, I don't know if I believe the Bible. I don't know if it's true. And you kind of look at that and like, oh, maybe it is true. And you're like, but Jesus, did he really die? And so you get case for Christ. Or you talk to people and you're like, oh, man, I think he did die and he rose. Man, I don't think we can argue with that. I think he's everything he said he was going to be. But then comes the hard part, which is saying, Jesus, you can lead my life. It's like knowing that things are true, which the devil believes all those things, and deciding to follow Jesus, there's a lot of times a significant gap. Some of you grew up in church, and you already know it's all true, and you're just refusing to submit to Christ. Can I tell you the reason? Because you believe that what you're giving up by following Christ is too great for what you're going to get out of the deal. You think, man, I'm going to give up all of the wonderful, awesome things that this world has to offer to settle for the pathetic rewards that God offers. And it's like, wow, you are being duped. If you could see, if you could understand what so many of us have, you would realize that, man, all this world has to offer, it's not worth anything. It's not worth anything, and you would gain everything. Gain everything if you would invite Jesus to forgive your sin and lead your life. Now, Paul writes something to followers of Jesus, and so this is written to followers, and I'll say to those of you who are followers of Jesus, and this is a great passage for you, because if you ever look, and I know this is probably true, you'll have quick thoughts of, wow, it'd be really nice to go do that. I can't do that because I'm a Christian. It would be really nice to. It would be really nice to. It would be really, this is the verse you need. But for those of you who aren't Christians, who are kind of in that debate, Paul just says, therefore, what benefit were you then deriving from the things of which you are now ashamed? For the outcome of those things is death. So, the thing God would say that thing that's so precious to you that you're like, man, I couldn't ever follow Jesus because then I'd have to give up this and I'd have to go. He says the outcome of what you're doing, the outcome of a life devoted to yourself, the outcome of a life where you go your own way, the outcome of that is death. And from what we understand of Scripture, and you may not be there yet, you just keep investigating. You can't escape that. You can't escape that. You can really feel like, I want to know what it feels like to fly. I want to go my own way and, defy God, defy the way how he made me, and I'm going to just go jump off of a tall building. I want to know what it feels like to fly. And you know what? You may enjoy that for a time. I don't know how many seconds you're going to enjoy it, but it is temporal because you're going to hit the ground. It's going to result in your death, and you know what? A life of rejecting Christ results in your death. There is no benefit to turning away from Christ. Romans 6:22, but he says, but now having been freed from sin, once you're set free by seeking forgiveness and inviting him to lead your life, he says, you derive, and enslaved to God, you derive your benefit resulting in sanctification, and the outcome, eternal life. So look, you got sin in your own way. The outcome of that is death. If you're a follower of Jesus and you look back and think, oh, it'd be so nice. It's like, no, remember, the outcome of that is death. You don't want that. You don't want to run. Don't look longingly like, oh, you wish you could go to. No, that results in death, but following Christ results in eternal life. Pleasure forever is better than pleasure for a moment. Which would you rather have, $10,000 today or $10,000 every day, just sometime in the future? Don't know when it is, but at some point you're going to have treasures that last forever. Don't settle for temporary, pathetic pleasures here. It says, for the wages of sin is death, but the free gift of God is eternal life in Christ Jesus our Lord. There is no life apart from Christ. There's the illusion of it, but it's death. It's death. If you want to talk about that, and just keep coming. If you believe but haven't decided to follow, man, why not tonight? Why not tonight? Talk to somebody. Go back to the prayer room afterwards. Talk to me or one of the other members in the band or something. For those of you who follow Jesus, though, do you really believe that you will be better off if you follow God in every situation? I know you'd say, well, overall, yeah. No, I'm talking about tomorrow when there's a temptation. Do you really believe that you would be better off, that God is a rewarder of those who seek him? If you don't believe that, you're not going to change. You're not going to have victory. Do you believe that God is a rewarder of those who seek him? You have to believe that. It's impossible to please God if you don't believe that. Now, I was talking to this with Megan and Mallory, our 8 and 7-year-old, 2 weeks ago as I was kind of coming through this. I'm like, man, this would be so great for an 8 and 7-year-old to get a hold of. And they understood. I don't think they applied it quite as fast and as intensely as I was hoping. But I was talking to them about this principle. And we've done from time to time in our family, we're not great at it. We're not consistent, but try to catch our kids doing right. And it's like, we don't do that every time because then it's not faith. It's just, the immediate pleasure, and then they do it only for immediate, and if there's not immediate, then they stop doing it. So we don't want to bribe them, but it's like, you do the right thing, and occasionally we're going to catch you doing right, and we're going to reward you. And it's like, hey, let's, I'll go out for ice cream. You guys did so well. Now it'd be like go out for fruit, I guess, after the content of today's message. But we would do these little rewards, and Megan, like it was on cue. It was perfect. Right in the beginning of this conversation, I was talking about BLJ cards, Be Like Jesus cards that we'd done, and Megan interrupted me and just said, Dad, it would be so much easier to do the right thing every time if I knew that I was going to get rewarded every time. And I told her, and I'll tell you, we do. Every time. Every time. We just don't get it now. We just don't get it now. You have to believe that God is a rewarder of those who seek him. We have to believe that with 100% certainty. We have to believe that the rewards are better. What do you really want? I know what you say you want, but what do you really want? When we were back at the theater, I did a message entitled Deal or No Deal. If you missed it, I would just encourage you to get really just a great visual way to connect to it. I was going to try to bring it into this message, but didn't really have time to do that. Go back on the podcast. There's a book that we've highlighted last week. Still have some more copies out there. The Christian Atheist, Believing in God but Living as If He Doesn't Exist. Phenomenal book out there at the merch table. But someday, like me seeing that picture, someday you're gonna see things for what they really are. And like I said last week, you're gonna say, I'm such an idiot. I'm such an idiot for going my own way. I'm such an idiot for giving into that temptation over again. I settled for pathetic, passing pleasures of sin instead of choosing the infinite rewards of Christ. You're going to see where your sin leads. You're going to see what it costs you. You're going to see what it cost others. And then maybe you'll hate your sin. I was talking to somebody this morning. He just said, man, it takes a crisis. Why does it take a crisis for us to change sometimes? Why do we have to get caught? Because then we see the truth. So why not believe now, both in the certainty and the value of the rewards of following Christ in every situation? Psalm 16:11, David writes, you will make known to me the path of life. Like, you're going to show me what's life. In your presence is fullness of joy. In your right hand there are pleasures forever. Without faith, it's impossible to please God. If you're going to come to God, you must believe that He exists and that He rewards those who seek Him. If you believe that, then you'd be willing to pay the price, any price for God to have His way in your life. Now, in some areas, this isn't a big deal, and honestly, it's a toss-up. I mean, the certainty issue, but then the value issue. In some areas, and you could say, well, let's go back to the weight thing, right? I was 100% certain at that point that it could make a difference, that it would benefit me, that there would be a reward for not giving in, there would be a reward for exercising. And I was 100% certain that I would enjoy a piece of pizza, another fourth or fifth piece of pizza, right? I was both certain, so I just had to make a value judgment. Which is more important to me? What's more valuable? And honestly, in a lot of areas, you go, whatever. I mean, it bothers me that I kept saying that I was deceiving myself all those years, that I kept saying that I really want to get in shape, I really want to get in shape. Do you know what I really wanted? As I kept saying that? Another piece of pizza. Another piece of dessert. That's what I really wanted. I didn't want to exercise. That's what I really wanted. But I was deceiving myself into thinking and saying what I really want. But see, when you really want something, you'll do what it takes to get there. I mean, when you finally really want it, you will do what it takes to get there. We say we want to get out of debt and be more generous, but what we really want is to get the latest and greatest stuff. So, let's be honest. That's why we do what we do. What do you really want? What do you want out of life? I mean, really. What do you want this week? Your own way or God's way? Now, if you're somebody who's not a follower of Jesus, and you look at this week's message and last week's message, and you go, okay, man, the certainty thing, and honestly, and you're, I don't know, to try to better yourself, however you want to say it, like you can use this stuff, and it could be really, really helpful. And I would say just try it. I mean, try the Bible out in this and say, and just apply it in any area. Certainty of the reward and value of the reward. And say, if you can believe those two things about the future, you'll start to change. And it'll be cool, if you could drop a few pounds, maybe get more active, maybe change this about yourself, that'll be cool. But if you're a follower of Jesus and you walk out of here just motivated to change your diet, then you've missed an opportunity. That's not what this is about for you and me. This is about, are we willing to pay the price to be a follower of Christ in every situation? To please Him in every situation? Maybe today you could finally start to believe Jesus. You could finally start to trust Him. And I know you'd say, oh, I already do trust Him. No, I know that the whole heaven and hell thing. I know that. I'm talking about my temptation is to go this way, and Jesus says to go this way. Who am I going to believe? Who are you going to believe? What do you really want? When we have the opportunity to obey, if we believe that Jesus is a rewarder of those who seek Him, then we'll do the right thing. We'll turn away from sin. We have the opportunity to do good. Even if it costs you, you'll do the right thing. Why? Because we do what we believe is going to be rewarded. And if we could see that the rewards of sin are temporal and pathetic in comparison to the rewards of following Christ, you would see your life start to change. Without faith, it is impossible to please God. He who comes to God must believe that He exists and that He is a rewarder of those who seek Him. So what do you really want? Spiritually, in that area, in your struggle with sin, what do you really want? I know you say you hate it, but do you really? Do you really? Maybe today you could decide, I really want to follow Jesus. I really want to please God in every situation. I want to do what He wants. And maybe today you could make a decision. Maybe today you could really repent and turn away from it and saying, I do not want that anymore. I'm going to believe Jesus. I just want to give you a minute before we wrap up the service just to bow your heads where you are. And just ask the question. Maybe just search your soul and say, what is it that I really want? I know what I say I want. What is it that I really want? And then ask God to give you the faith to believe in the certainty and the value of rewards.